Welcome to True Hauntings YouTube edition, and this week we are bringing you the Black Monk of Pontefract, or 30 East Drive.
So this actually happened 10 years before the Amityville horror case. Can you believe that?
I know.
Wow.
And it's supposed to be still active today. So is it the Black Monk that apparently tended an orchard there and raped children and threw bodies down the well? Or is it something else?
Is it an urban legend that has now exploded to a point where you can't put it back in its box?
So we've actually been to this place.
We have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was on our bucket list, and we got to do an investigation.
And that was so exciting.
It was. I got to sit on the stairs and beg for things to be thrown at me.
Yep, we traversed most of England to get there to spend the night because we just wanted to be at this house to examine and explore for ourselves this tale of the Black Monk.
And hopefully have our own experience, because we're the type of people that we read about these things, we learn about these things, but we want to experience ourselves.
Yeah. So this is quite an interesting story, and it goes back a long time in the history of Pontefract.
Back when Renata was born?
Yes. Even before that.
Oh, gorge, it is really old.
Yeah. Back to the history of the township of Pontefract, which kind of really is a very small but historic place up in the north of England, and it's well known for its licorice fields.
Oh, yummo. Remember we got you that birthday cake with the black licorice icing?
Oh, no, it was
we
so
were
nice.
pooping green for weeks.
But there was also a famous battle there, the famous Battle of Chequerfield, which went on around the area of where this particular haunting took place. And also we have the story of a monastery around Pontefract where allegedly this Black Monk comes from.
So that's where the legend came from. The people have sort of cobbled together a few bits and pieces, and it's become almost an urban legend.
Yeah. Now, the site itself, 30 East Drive, is now actually part of an estate, and you drive in, and all the houses are very, very similar.
It's very similar.
Very working class families live there.
Yeah, a lot of people that work down the mines, like this particular family we look at, Joe was a miner.
Yep. And allegedly it sits on what used to be an old waterway, and there was a bridge very close to it. So
Wasn't there also a place where they were hanging people nearby?
Yes, across the road. That's right, across the road.
Yes, in a park?
Yeah, in the park, which is where we sort of hung out before everyone arrived.
We'd have swings, but they have swinging gallows.
Yeah. So this all kind of adds to the aura of the site, because when you sort of go and try and find the house, you kind of think, where is it? It's going to be really special. It's not.
So the Farrow family were the first ones to move in there, and apparently there was phenomena when they were there, but I can find no reference to that whatsoever. It was just mentioned briefly in a comment in a blog somewhere. But the family that went in there that had the biggest experiences were the Pritchard family. And at first they didn't even realise that it was a haunting, because it started off with just some sort of a fine white powder falling from the ceiling. And of course Mrs. Pritchard got very annoyed because she had to go and dust all that stuff up.
But then they went away for the weekend, and they left young Philip and his grandmother.
Philip was a teenager.
To stay in the house. Now,
Philip had a Barney with the family and said, I'm not going on holidays to the seaside.
Yeah, they went to Devon, that's right. He got to stay with the grandma.
Oh, lucky Philip.
So, I mean, was all of this happening because he was just pissed off and he didn't want to be with the grandma, or did actually things happen that weekend?
So they started to have cupboards banging and carrying on, and crockery sort of falling out, and they weren't quite sure what it was. Water puddles on the floor.
That's the big thing.
Was
water
another
puddles
phenomena.
On the floor.
And they
she turned off all the electricity. So Grandma was smart enough to go out and turn the electricity off because she thought they were going to electrocute themselves. Every time she wiped a puddle, another
back
one
up
would
again.
appear.
And they had a lot of family that was living nearby. So they had some family across the road. There was some more people down the street. So family members would come over and try to work out what's happening. They called council people in to check for leaks, and there was nothing. And there was even a little bit of a dabbler of the paranormal that was down the road, and he came up and sort of had a look through the house and gave his professional opinion.
Yeah, the thing was that it sort of when the parents came back, they had a chat about it, and of course things escalated a little bit. But as poltergeist experiences happen, they sometimes wax and wane. So there was a bit of time when really very little was occurring, and then it sort of sparked up again. The thing was that the story started to leak out into the community, and the newspaper got a hold of it.
Yes.
And once the newspaper actually told the story about this poltergeist experience there, people started to come and
camp on the lawns.
Because
there's a bit of a park out the front, because we saw that. And they would actually camp out there and hopefully get in to have a look at what was happening in the house. And this is somebody's home. You can't do that.
So some more of the experiences that were going on in the house, this is really important to talk about, because some of the experiences there, we got to challenge ourselves with, like the coal hole. So one of the big things was the father, Joe.
Yeah.
He went into the coal hole to get coal, because working in the mines, coal for him was free. So they had this special room.
And it was inside the house.
Inside the house. He went in there, and apparently something really terrifying happened to him. When he came out, he was never the same person again.
And he refused to talk about it. And he's obviously now passed, but never found out exactly what happened. But whatever it was, now he was a very solid, sensible man who would normally not believe in this stuff, but whatever happened to him traumatised him so badly.
Now, I spent time in the coal hole.
You did? And a REM pod went off.
A REM pod went off. Other than that, nothing happened. I stared at the door for a really long time going, this is a really long time to be in here.
I just want to point out something interesting. The daughter, Diane, she at one stage was dragged up the stairs by her hair and had a piece of furniture slide across and pin her to the stairs. Now, they were all freaking out, and I think the auntie Renee was there at this stage, or she was related to the family somehow or other, and she was a clairvoyant as well. But Diane was petrified. The interesting thing that they mentioned is that when she started to relax, the phenomena started to stop. Now, Philip was a teenager, Diane was a teenager. That's when it seems the poltergeist was most active. So we have a bit of a theory on that, which we tell you about in the podcast. You'll have to listen to the full thing. They also had an auntie that thought this was all stuff and nonsense.
Yes, she was a very religious lady as well.
She came in and said, this is all rubbish, you people don't know what you're talking about. And while she was telling them all off about how this was not real, the fridge door opened, a jug of milk floated out in front of her, and then emptied its contents over her head. All the while she was singing Onward Christian Soldiers.
A very good song to sing, yes.
Yes.
Now, let's get back to the Black Monk himself.
Yes, because there's all this poltergeist activity happening, but no Black Monk at this stage.
Yes. So where did they come up with the whole Black Monk theory?
Well, it actually happened to the neighbour first, where a black shadow rose up out of the ground, confronted her, and she, being the stoic English lady, sort of went, oh, go away.
Now, it went next door. Remember, this is a semi-detached house. So this whole thing, this black darkness, slipped through next door, because obviously this lady wasn't terribly interested. So the monk thought he would find another spot where he could entertain the family even more. And that was right next door.
And I remember sitting up on the landing of the house where all the bedrooms are, and they had me blindfolded. I had a camera on me, and they were watching downstairs, and I started to tell the Black Monk what I thought of him, and I started to provoke, and I don't often do that, but there was not much happening, so I decided to give it a crack. And I have to say that the atmosphere up there started to change dramatically, and I started to feel a threatening presence coming from one of the bedrooms, and I did pull the plug and got out of there.
Now, is this whole thing a true haunting? We've got some issues. The closeness of the neighbours, the fact that the whole family gets involved in this. They call everyone. Everyone from the village literally is involved in this whole thing, and they all have a piece of a story to tell. Is the Black Monk actually associated with the area at all? I guess you'll have to listen.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the monk, but I know that Richard Estep went there, and I do have a lot of respect for Richard Estep. He's written a lot of books, and they did have an experience where he hid a recorder in the house, and once he left, they all went away for lunch, they came back and they found the mirror smashed on the ground. He went and retrieved the recorder thinking that somebody's done something while they're away. So when they played back the recorder, there was no sounds of footsteps, no sounds of anything, just the sound of the mirror hitting the ground.
It's an old house. It sits on ground that could vibrate. There is a waterway underneath it. There are hundreds of reasons why a mirror can fall off a wall.
I don't know. I think if it's able to lift up and come off, apparently it was a huge mirror. Have a listen to the podcast. This family didn't really have an ulterior motive to make up. And
they decided to stay.
Yeah, they sat it out.
Mrs. Pritchard said, no one is getting me out of this house. This is my home.
Oh, and it liked marbles. Yeah. Apparently police even saw marbles being thrown around the place. But whether it's a true haunting or not, join us in the podcast and find out.
Yeah, this is a really interesting story. So lots of information. We are sure you're going to be intrigued by it.
Find us on iTunes, Spotify, and whatever your favourite podcast app is.